Welcome, everybody. Welcome, depending upon your time zone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are very welcome to a special event. This is a Scitrain Synapse joint webinar event that we are bringing to you, especially for International Open Access Week. We're going to be talking about journal selection. We're going to be talking about planning a successful publication. But in the meantime, let's say welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Do let us know where you're from. Put a few comments. Let us know where you're from in the chat box. My name's Gareth. I'm working with Scitrain, which is a company that provides educational training for researchers around the world. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined in our webinar today by Utkarsha Bosale. Utkarsha, how are you today? How are you doing?
I'm good, Gareth. Thank you for the wonderful invite. Happy to be here and share my insights on the occasion of the International Open Access Week. There we go.
Fantastic. Well, why didn't you tell us a few things about Synapse? What's Synapse? As we wait for our attendees to join us in the webinar room, and I see from Pakistan, from Ethiopia, great to see so many people from all over the world joining us for this event. Do let us know where you're from. Do put a few comments there into the chat box. Utkarsha, Synapse, what's that all about?
Firstly, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining the session. Since it's free for all, I hope we're able to share some insightful concepts with you that will definitely help you in future and transform how you approach research publication in general. So I'm Utkarsha Bosle. And I am the editor-in-chief at Synapse IO's Research Trends and Insights platform. What Synapse exactly does is it's a research intelligence AI powered tool. And what it does is it just makes your research journey so much easy in terms of helping you find the right papers so that you can make your research and literature review much easier than it already is, gives you an opportunity to collaborate with researchers, the top influencers of your industry, with its feature called as Expert Finder. And there's so much more to it that you can just know by exploring the tool yourself. So I would request all the participants out there to Google synapse.io and explore it for yourself and just see how it changes and transforms the way you approach research in general.
Awesome. Well, I've had a look and I can tell you that it's a great platform. It's really, really well worth having a look at. We'll put the links and other content in the chat box as we go through our event today, which we are, I think, just about ready to get started with. Just giving everybody a few moments to join us here in the Zoom room. As I mentioned already, this is a Scitrain Synapse joint event. Everybody who registered for this will, of course, get a certificate, will, of course, get a recording of our event today, and Utkarsha and I are always available. You can find us really easily on LinkedIn. You can get in touch with us anytime. We're here to answer any of your research questions. And with that all being said, I think it's time for us to begin our journey, our webinar event today, as we talk about planning a successful research publication. Don't forget, it's International Open Access Week. So we're talking about journals and open access journals in this presentation. But let me say as well, do tell us where you're from. Do get involved. Do put your comments and questions into the chat box if there's something that we talk about, something that you'd like to learn more about. We'd love to help. We'd love to make this an engaging and interactive webinar session. We'll have a Q&A at the end, which everybody will be very welcome to participate in. We've got a few polls and quizzes that'll be going up as we go through our event today as well. And as Utkarsha is going to talk about a little bit later, we'd like you to end this session with a few actionable measures, a few takeaways that you can put into practice in your own research journey, right, Utkarsha?
Yes, definitely so. So leverage all the tips, all the insights, the strategies that we will pull out for you all and make them into an actionable plan. And then it's all easy for you.
Absolutely. That's the goal of all of this research training, to help you get the most out of your research, the most out of your publication. So a Q&A session coming up in a bit. polls that we're going to be launching as well, and then actionable tips and tricks, actionable measures for your successful research publication. And this is really, really, really important. We're both recovering academics at Kasia and I. We're both former researchers. We'll give you some insights from our own experience, but publication and the impact of the publications that you write based on your research, the journals that you select, really has, of course, a major impact on your research career. So if you're listening to this as an early career researcher, great, welcome. It's fantastic to see you here. You will, of course, be writing up your research for publication in order to develop your reputation, of course, and get recognition within the academic community and beyond. Your publications, especially in open access journals, lead to lots of collaboration opportunities. Did you know, for example, that open access journals get read by people from all over the world? Many, many, many more researchers will get access to your articles if you publish in open access journals. This leads to lots more collaboration opportunities, funding, of course, and impact on your field. It's all a great thing at Kasia. What about some insights, some recollections from your publishing career? Did you find that these tips are actually the case, or?
Yes, I would definitely say so. And like, let me just paint a picture in front of you, right? Imagine two researchers, both brilliant, both dedicated, both with groundbreaking findings. But one understands what I'm about to share with you today, what we are about to share with you today, and the other doesn't, unfortunately. They published a paper, but 6 months later, let's say, the first researcher is fielding collaboration offers, like Gareth already mentioned, from 3 continents, right? Their paper is being cited in grant proposals, and their findings are also shaping policy decisions. The second researcher, on the other hand, still waiting for their first review, probably. The difference, I would say, is not intelligence, not research quality, simply strategy. And that's what we're going to break it down for you all today.
Absolutely. Couldn't
So,
agree more. Absolutely.
yes. So let's move on and understand that this just isn't a dream that you're seeing. This is the power of strategic publication planning. And let's unfold it and just understand how to make your paper stand out. All right. So, just a stark reality for all of us. The most brilliant research paper in the world can fail completely if submitted to the wrong journal. Am I right, Gareth? You could count me on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's really, really, really important. You could have the best research idea, have the best data, do the best
Yeah,
analysis, really significant outcomes. But if you don't publish it in a journal that people are going to read, that's a problem.
exactly. So, groundbreaking research rejected not because of quality, but because of poor journal selection. That's so sad. And why do you think must this happen? Journal selection is often treated as an afterthought by most of them. In my STM publishing career, as much as I've dealt with a lot of researchers, be it at their early career stage or be them experienced, sometimes it's always, oh, we'll see where to publish. They would want to focus first on the writing. But it should be your first strategic decision. And I'll tell you why. Different journals have different audience reaches. Citation patterns vary significantly by journal. Editorial preferences affect acceptance chances, definitely so. And journal choice influences who will read and cite your work. So let this happen to all of us. And that's where Gareth and I will be sharing this whole entire concept with you, making you understand how to make your research stand out. But before we dive deeper into this entire conversation, let's shoot a poll now. And I'm curious, we both are curious about something. Let's understand who's in the room today. So, Gareth, let's launch our poll.
Absolutely. I'm just going to do that now. Fantastic. Yeah, it's really, really, really important. Really important. And I've definitely published a few papers in my career that no one's ever read, but that I think are actually quite good. So let's have a look at this
Yeah,
poll. We're just launching it now. There you go, Kasha. Your publishing history.
definitely. So, share your publication experience, guys. If you're at zero publications, congratulations. You're about to start your journey with insider knowledge most researchers take years to discover. Like Gareth and I have definitely faced some hiccups in our past when we were just starting out. If you're between 1 and 10, you are in the sweet spot, I would say, for transforming your publication strategy. Above 11, you're about to learn how to leverage your experience for even greater impact. More than 50, you're a veteran, and we'd love your insights during the Q&A session for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do get involved. I can see that several colleagues have lots of publications joining us today, which is fantastic. We've got a real broad spectrum of people because we have obviously early career researchers, people just getting going, and as well as more established researchers. And I just want to echo quickly while you're filling in the poll, like what Kasia was saying before, like when we talk to researchers, often they write the paper and then they start to think about where they can get it published. And that, based on our experience, is not the most effective strategy for successfully getting your work published in a leading journal. Let's think about journal selection from the outset of a particular research project. That's really, really important. So the way that you build your publication, the strategy, as Kasia mentioned, that you have to put your article together based on your research can speed everything up and make you much more successful at the end of the day.
Yes, definitely so. And all our researchers have already participated, and we have quite a few researchers and publishers who have published over in the range of 1 to 20 papers. So it's a good spot for us. It's a new learning space for us. So great. Let's move ahead.
100%. So we're talking about ensuring that your paper stands out. Where you choose to publish is the most important decision. We've just done our quick poll for researchers, a range of different experiences joining us in the event today, which is absolutely fantastic. But why is this important, Kasia? What are we looking at here on this graph?
Yeah, so here this is just a snippet from what data we acquired from Synapse is that these are actual numbers where you see an exponential growth in the number of publications over the last years. Annual research output is growing exponentially, as you can clearly see in this graph over here. And this is validated till the year 2023. Since we are still in 2024, that data would come in later. So we are seeing at least an average of 4% yearly increase in publication volume. New journals are emerging regularly, if we would say, in different areas, different research fields. And most importantly, interdisciplinary research is creating new publication venues as well. So that is something as well that we need to explore in our fields. The final thing that I would interpret is AI and machine learning are accelerating research input in general. Now, what does this mean? This means more competition, more noise, and more pressure to stand out. But here's the exciting part. This also means more opportunities for those who know how to navigate the system. So let's move ahead into the core focus areas that we should focus on while we are planning to publish.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was really interesting that graph because you can see everybody that last year in 2023, more than 2 million papers were published. That's incredible. So we'll talk in a moment about how you can, if you're one of those 2 million papers, how are you going to ensure that as many people as possible read your article? But in this section of our webinar today, we're going to quickly touch on things to think about before you start to write journal selection, as well as things to think about before you submit the written article into an international journal. So let's move on. Let's talk quickly. Just a few things to have in mind. These are tips and tricks to ensure that your research stands out. As Kasia was saying, journal selection is that all important first step. You must have come across many people, many times in your career at Kasia, where people are coming to you with a written manuscript and they're thinking at that point about where they should publish it. So comments on that? It's not really the best strategy, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, Gareth. I completely agree. And there's so much of conundrum around it where people are like, oh, let's focus on the writing part first, and then we'll see where, like I mentioned earlier on also. So what happens later on is the publication is delayed. They do not know where to go. Then after several months of it being into the review system, probably your research is already outdated. Somebody else has probably found the right journal, the right place. It's all about being at the right place at the right time, as we would say, right? So just make sure, like the first thing to do is um, before you write a single word, this is where 80% of your success is determined. That's where you select your journal. And before you hit that submit button on the journal platform, this is where you secure your paper's future, I would say. So, like you can see on your screen, over 2 million papers are published over years, and 30,000 journals are what there are, right? It's just one chance to make your mark. There's only one chance to make your mark. So why not? Why let it go waste? Double your citation potential, slash rejection rates, and accelerate your time to publication, right?
Right. Because people come up to us like online, of course, like virtually, like over email and on LinkedIn and WhatsApp and stuff, and they ask questions like, how many words should I put into the
Yeah.
abstract? Like, how much information should go into the introduction, into the methods, into the results, and so on? Those are very common questions that researchers are asking about their study and preparing their study for publication. But if you've got a target journal in mind before you start to write, doesn't matter what that target journal is, but have a look at where other successful researchers in your field, in your subject area, are publishing their research. That's a great tip. Find papers, find journals that have recently published similar work to the work that you want to publish. Successful researchers around the world that you follow, that you admire, that are doing great work in your field. Where are they publishing their papers? And have a look at the shape of those articles. And then you can answer many of those common questions that people get hung up on, that people get stuck on later in the writing process before you even begin. Because if your target journal is Nature Communications, let's say, for argument's sake, you can look at recent papers and figure out the answers. What should the title look like? What should the abstract, the introduction, the methods, and so on? Those are really, really common researcher questions, right, Kasia?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, Gareth, here. So now it's time for our next poll, which is, this is where it actually gets interesting for all of us. When do you think is the best time to select your target journal? So let's launch the poll and
I'm just doing that. Yep.
yeah,
Let's when's the best time to pick a journal? Let's see if you've been paying attention. Let's see if you've been awake in our webinar so far. Let's give our audience a few moments to answer this poll, but really, really critical. And I must say, from my own research career, I never really spent that much time thinking about which journal I was going to publish my papers in. I followed like my supervisor's recommendations. I looked at, where similar research was being published. If I got rejected, I often got quite downhearted, quite dejected.
yeah,
And
all of us.
yeah, and then I would often make another mistake, which is to send the paper to a much lower tier journal just to see it get published. So I have a few examples from my career where I went high with the first submission, got rejected, and then went to a very low tier journal just so that I could see the research get published. And that can also be a mistake.
Definitely. And also, I think it comes from the whole terror of publish or perish concept. right? We as researchers are constantly in the fear of, oh, I need to publish so much. Oh, I need to be there at at a conference. I need to be there publishing in a particular journal. So in that whole fear and in that whole terror, I think we lose out on a lot of things that we need to consider, but not anymore, especially for the participants of our webinar. They are going to go home with a complete strategy, full plan that will help them get better every time that they make a new submission.
So let's have a look at the results of our second poll. I'm just going to end that. Thank you all so much for participating. Let's share those results. Hopefully you can see the results on your screen. And if you're making like a few notes and building like an actionable strategy for your next research publication journey, tip number one, Utkasha, number one thing to do, when should I pick a journal for my next research project?
It definitely is before writing the paper, right? And it is amazing to see that 27% of our participants today have voted for it. A few have voted for after finalizing the manuscript, and some have voted, it depends on the specific research project. Well, somehow everybody is right in their own way, but the ideal way of or ideal stage at which we should be selecting our journal is before writing the paper. Now let's see why.
Yep, just going to move on. Absolutely. Okay, take it away. The ideal research publishing cycle that we recommend.
It's definitely, as we said earlier, before writing your paper.
So this is what we like to call the kind of wheel of fortune, the wheel of academic publishing. I often call it like a hamster wheel of academic writing and publishing, because you're probably looking at this thinking, well, I have several ideas. Maybe I'm applying for funding. Maybe I'm doing a number of different research projects. Maybe I've got a paper that I'm writing. Maybe I've got a paper that I've already submitted and I'm waiting for peer review reports to come back. Usually researchers have several projects on the go. They've got several plates spinning all at the same time. You might find yourself at several different stages around this wheel at the same time, right? Today we're talking about journal selection, but it is important to visualize your research journey as a continuous, never-ending cycle, right? Akasha projects just get to different stages at different
Yeah.
times. So part of the strategy for being successful as a researcher is managing and making sure that you have ideas and funding applications, research projects, that you're flowing into this cycle at different stages consistently. So that's just a better way to manage all of the stress, all of the work, all of the things we have to do as academics day to day.
Yes, absolutely so. And let's move on with why should we select a journal before writing? Let me tell you something I have never seen fail in my experience is I never start to write until I have decided on a target journal. Why? Because every journal is different. That's all we know. Different scope, different audience, different requirements, different impact potential, which is what we keep looking for. What is the impact factor of this journal? I need to publish in a very high impact factor journal. This isn't just about following guidelines of the journal. It's about speaking the right language to the right audience at the right time. Let's talk about self-evaluation over here. Ask yourself, who needs to read this research? Who will cite it? Who will apply it? Do we have an answer for that? Then that's your right journal. Talk to others. Your colleagues are your first peer reviewers. Use their insights, right? Also, what you can do now is make pre-submission inquiries. Why play guessing games when you can get direct feedback from the editors? Being editor myself, it just makes it easier for us, like for the editors as well, and smoothens the entire journey. It streamlines the publication journey from the journal as well as the researcher perspective. You get a better idea in terms of, oh, is it the right fit or not, right? And that's about it. Like, make sure that you follow these steps, ensure that these things are taken care of considerably. And that is the reason why you should be selecting your journal before writing. What are your thoughts on this, Gareth?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you need to bounce ideas around with colleagues. Like, don't just go to the first journal that comes into your head or the first journal that sends you an email inviting you to send them a paper, which is something that we'll talk about in a
Yeah.
moment. It's well worth putting the time into this. I often say that, you'll know like which journals are being used regularly by researchers that you like and respect in your field. I'd make a list of those, just spend a few moments like after this webinar or later in the day, listing 5 or 10 journals that you've recently seen key pieces of research in your field published in, and put those into a kind of ranking system, like maybe by impact factor. I used to do that, and you can see then like the different relative impact factors of the journals that key people in your research field are using. And of course, it varies depending on the field of research. In humanities and social sciences, just less journals. In some fields like medicine and health sciences, thousands and thousands of journals. But that list can then be used to target your submissions. And as Kasia was just mentioning, self-evaluation is very important, and also pre-submission inquiries, which is a little trick that we've picked up along the way. Higher impact factor journals ask for this anyway, but you can always do this, and we'll share some insights on how you can in a moment. But here's some more reasons why you should choose a journal early, Kasia.
Yes, definitely. There's more to it. But before that, I would like to plug in where Gareth also said, based on his experience of finding journals based on their impact factor and listing them down. Let me plug in synapse.io over here because it does it in few seconds for you. Put in your research field, put in the years that you would want for it to tell you which journal has ranked better, which journal gives you the most impact, the kind of citations that the journal has received, so on and so forth. You just put it over there and you will find the exact journal for your target research and for your target audience. Another thing that it also has is expert finder for collaborative approaches. You can put in your research field and you will actually see the top experts of your field who you can potentially collaborate with. So that's about it. Moving on, there are more reasons, as Gareth said, to choose a journal early on. Think of this as your target audience's information. Now, who reads this journal? What disciplines do they cover? What types of articles do they prefer? Right? Second is you'll know their guidelines. This is where the magic happens, right? General procedures, peer review processes, formatting requirements, word limits, copyright policies, even preferred English variant, if it is UK English or if it is US English, all of it. Now imagine writing your paper once and having it fit perfectly. You follow these tips and that can happen to you.
Yeah. I mean, we provide like training courses on all of these different aspects, English writing, journal
Yes,
selection. So do have a look at the other content that we
yes,
have available.
yes.
Maybe if you're interested in having us show up to your university remotely and provide additional training, that would be something that we'd absolutely love to do. Because before you start to write an academic article, you need to have in mind your message. What is it that you want people reading your paper to get out of that reading experience? What's the takeaway? What's the take-home message of your research? That's the thing number one to have in mind. Then your audience, of course, as we've been discussing, that's going to be your target journal, as we've talked about already in this event. And then, of course, from the target journal comes thing number three to have in mind before beginning to write. And that's the structure of the writing itself. So message, audience, and structure are key elements of your planning process before you begin to write. And we'll talk about peer review in a moment. We'll talk about pre-submission inquiries in a moment, and also preprint platforms as a venue to put your research out there and have it potentially available for other researchers to look at before the peer review and publication stages. And you've talked to this slide already, I think, at Kasia, but Accessibility, open access, whether the journal has an impact factor, and what all of this means. Because effective journal selection is that marriage, isn't it, between research and publication.
Very well put, Gareth, I would say. It's a good analogy to use. Um, Detailed selection factors depend upon the accessibility of your journal, whether it is open access, if it's an open access or a paid wall journal, subscription models, let's say, or a repository policy, right? Impact metrics such as impact factor analysis is something that's very important. The impact factor determines as to if of the potential chances of your research being reached to the right audience and also being cited by the right audience, right? The citation patterns that are involved in it, the kind of growth that you can see in the kind of citation that you will want to achieve with your research, which also helps you in becoming reputed and kind of getting the recognition that you have been wanting in your research field, right? And then also we move on to the next section, like journal merit priorities, right? The key considerations over here are the first one is publication speed, the time to publish, submission to first decision, the review timeline that is involved. You need to be aware of the amount of time that the journal is going to take to peer review your research and the production schedule. Several journals right now are automated with their publication processes. There is a portal that they have wherein they give you an estimated timeline that you can understand depending upon the topicality of the research field and the kind of content that you are planning to publish. You can choose for yourself which suits you the best.
It's a balance.
Next,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yes,
100%.
definitely
100%
so.
true.
Yeah, no. So moving on, the next one would be reach factors. Geographic distribution is one of the factors. Like, if I'm writing for a specific audience, for a specific region, if I'm talking about climatic changes in a particular region of the world, I would want to focus on that geographical condition and the geographical distribution of that journal in that particular area. Another thing also matters is if whether it is academic or industry oriented reach that I am looking for. Am I looking for researchers who are at the early career of their stage or who are professors at a university? Or am I looking at corporate researchers and corporate scientists who are creating content or who are writing papers for their product profile improvement or product development, which is at a societal beneficial level, right? And also another factor for reach is cross-disciplinary appeal. If my research is going to appeal different researchers from different interdisciplinary fields as well, and will that help me in reaching the right audience? Will that help me in creating a societal impact that we all are looking for in terms of being researchers? Right. And the third one, like we can see on our screen, is the impact consideration, the impact factor, which is best for your paper. Citation potential of that particular journal, the field specific influence that it can have, and the alternative metrics that you can use to understand and determine the kind of papers that it publishes and the kind of audience that it reaches. Let's move on to the next slide where we talk about
100%.
the priority factors. So over to you, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, we talk to researchers all the time, right? We're interviewing them, we're reaching out to them, they're talking to us. So these factors and the information that you see in this presentation comes from talking to lots of researchers around the world. So what are the most important considerations for researchers? Well, impact factor, speed, and reach, readership are key concerns when selecting a journal. And this breaks it down in more detail. Researchers are concerned about readership. They want to publish papers that will get read. So we're finding a balance when we select a journal between these three aspects. The impact factor, of course, that's very important because that's how we're often assessed by governments, by our research institutions. Nobody wants to wait for 2 years or more for their paper to pass through peer review. Speed is critical, and also the readership, the reach. So we've just put these, different criteria here on this slide, like what are the aims and scope, the article length, the publication speed, the indexing, the impact factor. Will your paper be print online? Will it be open access? Very important to keep that in mind as well. And you could look at journal websites to find out a lot of this information, as well as some of the indexing sites that we're going to talk about in a moment. They will tell you what their acceptance rate is. They'll tell you often what their speed to publication is, right? But Kasia, we can use this information in a smart, strategic way to pick a good journal for our next publication.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Gareth. These factors are very important to you in terms of considering where should you publish and not. Now, if I have to speak about certain specification, one thing that typically stands out for me is the acceptance criteria based on the novelty requirements, the methodology standards, and data availability policies. It kind of emphasizes on the fact of how ethically has a researcher conducted the research, right? So that is something that I hold really close to myself in terms of making sure that while we are wanting to publish in this whole terror, everybody is going to the fear of publish or perish. However, while we are doing this, maintaining research integrity is absolutely necessary. And that will happen if you abide by certain considerations which are logical and which fall within the constricted walls of research integrity. Yeah. Oh, we have another poll today.
Yeah, we're going to launch another quick poll just to make sure everybody's still with us and still awake. And the question for this one is again something that I know is close to your heart, Kasia, and the
Yes,
work that
definitely.
Synapse are doing. I'll launch the.
All right. So here's the poll for you. The poll says, do you think AI tools can help you improve your journal search and selection process? Some would say yes, it would definitely. Some would say not sure. Some would say not at all. So cast your votes, everyone.
Yeah, what do you think? Do you think AI tools can help you improve your journal search and selection process? In my case, probably not all that much because I'm not so up to speed with many of the tools. What are some of the tools that people should be looking at Kasia, for selecting a journal using AI? Are there some that you'd recommend to our audience today?
Yeah. Yes, definitely so. So there is one tool called as DOAJ, which is the Director of Open Access Journal. Then there is another tool by OSPA, which is the Open Access Organization that we all know of. There is some other tools as well available out there. Synapse is one of the tools that helps you in identifying the right journal depending upon the kind of research that you want to publish. So there are several tools out there, and I definitely think that AI can help you in improving your journal search process. Definitely not telling you that you should completely rely on it, because we should never. And being an AI ethicist myself, I completely advocate that use of AI in its right precaution, in its right way possible, is necessary. AI is inevitable. We need to use it. However, ethical usage of AI is what we should definitely consider. And like we see, we're about to close our polls, and we've seen that 88% of our participants today have voted that we must use AI tools and they can help us in improving journal search and selection process.
Indeed. And what I've done while you've been talking at Kasia is just share a few links there for everybody in the
Oh,
chat.
great.
DOAJ, OASPA, Synapse I put again into the chat. And there's a tool called the EdAnts Journal Selector tool that I recommend that
Yes.
you
Oh,
try
I
as
missed
well.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the few that's not associated to a publisher. Many of the tools that you
Yeah.
find, if you just Google journal selection tool, you're going to get back results from the major publishers. And
Yes.
those, it's worth keeping in mind, are going to push you towards their journals. Okay, of course they are. If you use the Springer Nature journal selection tools, they're going to put you into Springer Nature journals, Wiley, Taylor, and Francis. So what we're looking for really are agnostic tools
Yes,
that will help researchers, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So all the researchers and all the participants out there, attendees in our webinar today, try out all the tools mentioned by Garrett today and choose your best fit, right?
Yeah, there's a thing called Global Campus that I also recommend people have a look at, and have a look at the journal indicators. I mean, there are a number of indicators that journals will give you about their relative quality. Be careful with these indicators, of course, because many predatory journals, we'll talk about those in a moment, they will tell you that they have an impact factor when perhaps they don't have an impact factor recognized by the single body, the single entity in scholarly publishing that releases those impact factors, Clarivate Analytics. So do check. If you get an email from a journal, we've got an impact factor of 10, why don't you submit to our special issue? You may be receiving what could be spam potentially. So do have a look at these indicators as well. We don't want anyone listening to this to fall foul of any of those particular issues, because there's a range of different kind of journals out there that people might be tempted to put their articles into, right? But Kasha, different types of journals.
Yeah. So here are three that we've mentioned already. First is the traditional journal, then we have the green open access journal, and then we have the gold open access journal. Speaking of the traditional journals, they are with established reputation, like the Elsevier and the ones which have been there for years now. Some of them are with a subscription model, which is something that people, uh, the kind of audience that you're trying to reach out to, will only have access to these articles, to your articles, only when they subscribe to the journal. It could be a paid model, or sometimes it could be just an email subscription as well. So it depends on that. Later on, it also depends on the visibility benefits that traditional journals could give you. And but the downside of it, sorry, is that it limits the accessibility of your research by the experts and the potential collaborators of your field. Next up is green open access. It has self-archiving options, which in my opinion is one of the best things to have happened to open access publishing and in publishing in general, right? It gives you repository benefits as well. You can save your articles, publish it in real time. Also, sometimes these preprints that we will speak about, like Garrett will speak specifically about preprints in our coming session, where he will let you know about the benefits that preprints can hold in this era where there is so much research happening out there. There's so much of information overflow that's happening out there, and how preprints could be your ultimate source of having to get the control over your research, or ensuring that your research reaches the right audience at the right time, right? Then we speak about the gold open access. As you can see, it gives you immediate accessibility. It gives your audience, as soon as you publish your papers, it is out there. The right audience can always reach out to it. APC considerations is something that we need to be aware of. APC, for people who do not know, are the article processing charges. These are the charges that certain journals levy on the authors so that they can publish their paper in their particular journal. However, there are certain funding opportunities as well for these gold open access journals, where they give an exemption to certain researchers from certain areas, low income based countries, and so on, where they allow them or waive off the APC charges as we're talking.
Get in touch
Also,
with us if you have, sorry, Prakash.
no, please continue.
I was going to say, if you have any questions about any of this, do get in touch. We're always here to answer any questions.
Yes, definitely so. Moving on to the next slide, Gareth can help us with the open access evolution.
Right. I mean, open access, we're all aware of this, hopefully, like it's becoming more and more prevalent. And this is just the model for publishing where your research is accessible to everybody. So if you choose to publish open access, and Utkarsha showed you green options as well as gold options, the green option, of course, you might publish your paper in a traditional journal, but you're allowed to put a final or late stage version of it into a repository like ResearchGate, Academia, your institutional website, for example. The paper's still open access. The final version of record, though, is owned by the publisher behind a paywall. That's green. Gold, of course, you've got to pay, or your funding agency's got to pay that dreaded article processing charge, but the paper is free and open access for everybody. And we've seen a big rise in the use of open access publishing, especially around preprinting, thanks in part to the pandemic, because lots of research was being put out there quickly, as fast as possible. And this slide that we put together just summarizes for you what Utkarsha was saying a moment ago. What's gold open access? What's green open access? If you've got funding or you work for a university, you may be mandated to publish your work open access in one of these two ways. So very important to have a look at this, very important to take a screenshot of this slide or ask us if you have any questions about the different kinds of open access publishing. Now, preprinting, I love preprinting. This is where you can put a piece of research, doesn't matter what stage it's at, that's up to you, doesn't matter what stage it's at, onto a platform where other people can access it, read it, comment on it, share it, and give you feedback. Lots of people say, well, won't they steal my research if I do that? No, actually, you're much better protected if you do preprint your work than if you don't. Let's imagine you go to a conference. This happened to me, by the way, at one point in my career. You give a talk, it's not published yet. The research results haven't been published yet. Somebody writes down some notes based on your talk and then goes off and does the research and publishes faster than you. If you had pre-printed that conference presentation, the slides, the abstract, what you've got of the research so far, you'd get a document object identifier, a CC license, a Creative Commons license. That means you're protected. You've got priority for that research. It's part of the open access movement. Journals will come to you. They'll talk to you. They'll ask you, wouldn't you like to send your paper to our journal? It's a really great way to share research. Would you agree, Utkarsha?
Yes, absolutely, Gareth. And I would like to add a few considerations when people are looking for preprints as well. The kind of benefits that it has, what Garrett said, are exceptional. It helps you in, reaching the right audience and ensuring that your research is published at the right time without somebody else stealing your IP for that matter. But a few considerations that you would also want to look into are first, the journal policies. Your target journal, if that journal is going to accept your the fact that you have already published. There are certain criteria for a journal as well that they accept from certain preprint servers only and so on. So ensure that happens. Another thing is version control. Which version would you want to be there on the web? So that is another thing. Citation tracking is very important, whether it is cited from your preprint, whether it is cited from your journal or the conference submission that you've taken, that you presented it at, all of these things. So just ensure that these three main considerations are also, kept in notice when you are actually publishing on a preprint server. So
100%.
this is an exciting one. Predatory journals out there.
Indeed, indeed. If you have any questions
Yeah.
about pre-printing, I know people get confused about it. Do let us know.
Yeah.
We want to help as well by just providing a little bit of information in this event about predatory journals, about grey journals, about dodgy journals. If you are thinking about publishing your research open access, of course, that model for publishing has created a bit of a black market because there's a payment that researchers make, the APC, as Kasia was mentioning before. That means that you've got quite a lot of journals and even publishers that are springing up like mushrooms all over the place, trying to just take your money and not really provide you with a proper peer-reviewed publication. So have a look at these items on this slide. If you get an email, and we all get them all the time, wouldn't you like to publish a paper in our journal or in our special issue? The website. Is the journal indexed properly? Who's on the editorial board? How regularly are they publishing? Are the articles being properly peer reviewed? Is the website telling you about the peer review process? Never, ever, 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 ever pay a fee to a journal or a publisher before your article has been peer reviewed and accepted, right? Akasha, we get this all the time. I regularly talk to researchers who are being charged all kinds of different fees by predatory publishing.
Yes, absolutely there. Like Gareth mentioned, do not ever pay a journal if your paper is not peer reviewed. And how do you know? One of the other criteria that you need to consider is ensure that you check the editorial board credentials. Try to assess the editorial board, try to see who's on the editorial panel. That's when you can know, okay, should I trust this journal or not? So that is also one of the things that you can definitely look into. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So reputable journals will be listed in the databases. And we've talked about the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals. I've given you that resource already in the chat. Committee on Publication Ethics, OASPA, Kasia mentioned that before as well. You've got to have a journal that's in one or all of these databases to be secure that your publication is going to a reputable publisher. And it's particularly a problem with open access publishing, unfortunately. You'll want to know about the peer review process. Never send an article to a journal that's not going to perform proper peer review. And they've got to have their fees and policies fair, listed on their website and explained in detail. So we both know loads of people who've fallen foul of this and paid money for a publication in a journal that didn't turn out to be a real journal or a real publisher. And that's a problem, because you still may have a publication. You can't repeatedly publish the same stuff, but you're not getting the work in a journal that has a decent impact factor, unfortunately. Few resources on this slide. thinkchecksubmit.org. There's the COPE website, Publication Ethics, and the other two websites that we've already shared, that we've already talked about. So let's have a quick think about some takeaways, Kasia. What are our key takeaways, our action plan for planning and successfully publishing our next research article in a leading international journal?
Yes, definitely. Like based on the poll that we just conducted, if we can trust AI and find it responsible, and with its responsible use, can we lead to a successful publication planning? The answer for most of us is yes. Now, there are certain considerations that you need to keep in mind is we need to mitigate bias that comes naturally to some human humans out there, right? Ensure that there is transparency in the usage of AI that you do in terms of either selecting a journal, using it for literature review, or even for, kind of finding the right collaborator for yourself. Always be accountable for what you take from the AI tool that you're using as part of your publication strategy or as part of your research writing process as well. We cannot hold AI accountable for the kind of hallucinations or the information that it regurgitates, right? And most importantly, ensure that you use a tool that explicitly mentions its data and security and privacy protection policies very clearly. So these are some things that you need to absolutely consider. Now, what are the best practices while you're doing this is data validation is absolutely necessary. Ensure that the kind of data that you use in your research is validated correctly. Select the right model of journal that you want to publish. Do you want to go on a green open access? Do you want to go on a gold open access, and so on and so forth? Performance evaluation is also something that's absolutely necessary while you are conducting research, right? So publish with ethics, publish with research integrity, and that will help you in building a connect, building a network and a reputation in the scholarly community, which will be known to all, which will be admired by all, and everybody would want to be, want to collaborate with you, would want to create more path breaking advancements in your research field with you, right?
Right.
So,
Wow, we've just given
yeah,
you a taster. We've just given you a taster in this webinar
yes,
of the kinds of guidance that we can provide. And it's great to see that so many people came and joined us today for this event. Ethical considerations, data quality, model selection and development, publication ethics, so much more that we could talk about that we don't have time
yes,
for today.
yeah.
In the time that we do
So,
have remaining, I'd like to invite everybody to give us a few questions. And we already have one from Preeta. It's fantastic. Thank you, Preeta. Certain forms for academic posts ask if the article has been published in a paid journal. If the answer is yes, Utkasha, would this then be considered as a discredit on the part of the applicant? So when applying for a job, I guess, or a funding application or something like that, Preeta's asking, like, should we be differentiating researchers based on whether they've paid for publications or not?
ideally not. Sometimes it also depends on from where the researcher is coming from, right? There are several reputed, highly recognized, and known journals who also charge APCs for publishing, right? So it doesn't matter. What matters is the authenticity of the research paper. What matters is where it has been published, right? So it should not be an issue at all. What Definitely. So, like the point that Gareth covered in the predatory journal. So, ensure that it's not a predatory journal. Ensure that it's a correct journal. It's a proper journal that you're publishing in.
100%.
Right.
It's a great question, Preeta. Like, if you're publishing in a leading open access journal, let's say Scientific Reports,
Yeah.
one of the PLOS journals, Biomed Central, just to name just a handful, Frontiers, MDPI, if I can mention that name in an event like this, um, you're going to have to pay, or
Yeah.
somebody's going to have to pay an article processing charge. Many of those journals have excellent impact factors. So no, the answer to your question is there should not be any like difference.
Repercussions. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a really, really good question. We have another one from Seda,
Yeah.
and this is about hybrid journals. We didn't
Yeah.
really mention hybrid journals in this presentation today. What is a hybrid journal, Kasha?
Yeah. So, basically, it depends on. Let me just give you an example. So, a hybrid journal is typically a hybrid open access journal is a subscription based journal that also allows some articles to be published as open access for a fee, while the rest of the journal remains behind the paywall. So this is there are certain what do you say APCs that we mentioned for publishing an
Right.
article in an open access journal, and hybrid open access journal are also one of those forms.
Exactly.
Again, it should not be a problem. They are often published by large publishers such as Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, and even Wiley. They are also, in this format of hybrid journals. So these are reputed journals and they cause no harm to our reputation, not at all. So you can definitely publish it.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about hybrid journals today, and that's a topic that we would cover in some of our longer training sessions. So do get in touch with us if you'd like more information or you'd like us to show up virtually at your university or institute. Yeah, and as Kasia says, if I submit a paper today to Nature,
Yeah.
fantastic, and it gets accepted, even more fantastic, I would not have to pay for that article
Yeah.
to get published because that's a traditional journal. So it could be free, right?
Yeah.
I'd be very, very happy to get a paper published in Nature, but only subscribers to Nature, institutional subscribers, can access my article. You
Yeah.
could, if you wanted to, pay to get access to it, and we've all seen that. We've all been there when that paywall pops up and it's like $35 just to read the great, words of X and Y, and nobody really ever pays that fee. They'd go to other websites, they'd email the author to get access. I can convert my Nature paper to full open access if I
Yeah.
want. And that's a hybrid journal situation. The fee for
Yes.
that, $11,000. So I don't know like how many people actually do it, but some
Yeah.
people do it. It's a great question. And thank you everybody for all the great comments that we're getting in the chat box. I think as we're up at the hour at Kasha, we should say thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your time today at Kasha. I learned a lot. Great to work with you. Thank
Yeah. Same here, actually. So, to conclude this session today, we started today with a question: how do we make your research stand out? Now you know, we're sure. And you have the tools, you have the strategy, you have the power to transform your publication success for sure. Let's not consider this to be an end, it's just the beginning. Because starting tomorrow, you're going to approach publication very differently. You're going to approach it strategically. You're going to approach it with confidence, as I'm sure. So remember, one thing for sure is your research deserves to be seen. Your insights deserve to be heard. And with that you've learned today, they will be. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Garrett, for giving me this opportunity, for inviting me to conduct this webinar with you. It was lovely working with you. It's such a good collaborative opportunity for all of us to ensure that we share the right amount of information, the correct information with our audience out there, and help them and help their research journey get better with time. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.